Commander Vex-Thul adjusted his four purple eyes as he stared at the latest intelligence reports from the Galactic Council's Xenobiology Division. The massive Klaxon warrior, standing nearly 8 feet tall with chitinous armor plating that gleamed under the artificial lights of his command ship, couldn't help but emit a low rumbling sound that passed for laughter among his species. "So," he said to his second-in-command, a nervous Tremerian named Quill 9 whose tentacles twitched constantly, "the humans have finally agreed to negotiations." Quill 9's bioluminescent patches flickered anxiously. "Yes, Commander. Their representative will arrive within the next cycle. A single human, as requested." Vex-Thul's mandibles clicked together in what could generously be called a smile. "Perfect. And our educational materials?" "Ready for deployment, sir. The Predator compilation footage from Earth's most dangerous creatures. Apex hunters, venomous serpents, massive carnivores. Everything designed to remind these soft mammals exactly where they stand in the food chain." The commander moved to the massive viewing screen that dominated the bridge of his dreadnought, the Bone Crusher. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly as they maintained position at the edge of human space. 3 months ago, humanity had made first contact with the Galactic Council, and the results had been disappointing. These bipedal creatures claimed to be the dominant species of their planet, yet they possessed no natural weapons, no armor plating, no venomous glands. They were pink, squishy, and laughably fragile. Commander, Quill 9 interrupted his thoughts, his voice carrying that particular tremor that indicated extreme nervousness. "The human vessel has just dropped out of hyperspace." Vex-Thul's eyes focused on the small craft approaching their position. It was sleek, efficient, and utterly unremarkable. Nothing like the bone ships of the Klaxon fleet, or the biomechanical horrors favored by the Zephyrian Empire. Just metal and ceramics formed into a functional shape. "Patch me through to the human ship," he commanded. The communication screen flickered to life, revealing a human female with short brown hair and bright green eyes. She wore what appeared to be a simple blue uniform with various insignia. Her expression was pleasant, almost friendly. "Greetings," she said in accented galactic standard. "I'm Captain Riley Mason, representing the United Earth government. Permission to come aboard?" Vex-Thul studied her carefully. No visible weapons, no obvious augmentations, no signs of genetic modification for combat purposes. She looked exactly like the intelligence files suggested, a typical human specimen, soft and weak. "Permission granted, Captain Mason. Dock in Bay 7. You will be escorted to the negotiation chamber." 20 minutes later, Captain Mason stood in the center of the Bone Crusher's primary conference room, seemingly unimpressed by the massive chamber's intimidating design. The walls were lined with trophy skulls from a dozen different species, all conquered by the Klaxon Empire over the past century. Weapon displays showcased the most terrifying armaments in known space. The lighting was deliberately harsh, casting sharp shadows designed to unnerve visitors. Riley Mason looked around the room with what appeared to be mild curiosity, as if she were touring a museum rather than standing in the heart of a warship designed for maximum psychological impact. She even paused to examine one of the skull displays more closely. "Interesting," she said, her tone conversational. "Holdorian warbeast, right? I read about these in the xenobiology texts. Fascinating cranial structure." Vex-Thul exchanged glances with Quill 9. The humans' reaction was not what they had expected. Most species either cowered in terror or puffed themselves up in defensive posturing when confronted with the Bone Crusher's interior. This human seemed genuinely interested in the decorations. "Please, Captain Mason, take a seat." Vex-Thul gestured to a chair that had been specifically designed to make occupants feel small and vulnerable. "Before we begin our negotiations, we thought you might appreciate some educational material about your planet's ecosystem." Riley settled into the chair with apparent comfort, crossing her legs casually. "Oh, that sounds interesting. I love nature documentaries." Quill 9 activated the holographic display system, and immediately the room filled with imagery from Earth. A massive great white shark breached the water's surface, its rows of razor-sharp teeth gleaming as it seized a seal in its powerful jaws. The footage switched to a Siberian tiger stalking through snowy forests, its muscles rippling under orange and black fur. Then came the venomous snakes, cobras with their hoods flared, rattlesnakes coiled to strike, sea serpents gliding through tropical waters with deadly grace. The presentation continued with African lions bringing down wildebeest, crocodiles performing their death rolls, grizzly bears standing over salmon runs, and in their massive claws dripping with water and blood. Each creature was shown in its most predatory moment, designed to remind the viewer of nature's casual brutality. Riley watched with rapt attention, occasionally making small sounds of appreciation. When footage of a particularly impressive leopard appeared, she actually smiled. "Oh, that's a beautiful spotted cat," she said. "Look at that muscle definition. Absolutely gorgeous." Vex-Thul's confidence wavered slightly. The human's reaction was still not following the expected pattern. She should be intimidated, reminded of her species' vulnerability in a universe full of predators. Instead, she seemed to be enjoying the show. The presentation reached its climax with footage of the most dangerous predators Earth had to offer: saltwater crocodiles, polar bears, and finally, the dreaded Australian box jellyfish. Its translucent bell pulsing with lethal beauty as smaller fish died instantly upon contact with its trailing tentacles. As the footage ended and the lights returned to normal, Vex-Thul leaned forward in his throne-like chair, expecting to see fear or at least respect in the human's eyes. Instead, Riley was still smiling. "That was wonderful," she said genuinely. "Earth really does have some amazing biodiversity, doesn't it?" "Captain Mason," Vex-Thul said slowly, his voice carrying the weight of authority that had cowed 100 different species, "I trust that presentation helped clarify your planet's position in the galactic hierarchy. These creatures represent the apex predators of your world, and yet they're all completely adorable," Riley interrupted, her green eyes sparkling with what could only be described as affection. "I mean, look at those great whites. People think they're monsters, but they're just big puppies with teeth." "Misunderstood, really." Quill 9's tentacles began twitching more rapidly. "Captain, these are apex predators. They kill without mercy. They are the most dangerous creatures on your planet." Riley laughed, and the sound was warm and completely genuine. "Oh, I suppose they can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. But humans have been living alongside these guys for thousands of years. We've learned to coexist pretty well." "Coexist?" Vex-Thul's voice rose slightly. "Captain, these creatures would tear apart most galactic species without hesitation." "Well, sure, if you go swimming with great whites without proper precautions, or wander into grizzly territory during salmon season, you might have a bad time." Riley agreed cheerfully. "But that's just common sense, really. You wouldn't walk into traffic without looking both ways, would you?" The Klaxon commander felt something he rarely experienced: confusion. His carefully planned intimidation tactic was not only failing, it seemed to be having the opposite effect. The human appeared more relaxed now than when she had first entered the room. "Captain Mason," he tried again, "surely you must understand that in a galaxy full of warrior species, humanity's lack of natural weapons puts you at a severe disadvantage." Riley's expression grew thoughtful. "Natural weapons? I suppose you mean claws, fangs, armor plating, that sort of thing." "Precisely. Your species evolved no defensive capabilities, no hunting adaptations. You are, by any reasonable measure, prey animals." Riley said, tapping her chin with one finger. "That's an interesting perspective, though I have to say it suggests a pretty narrow definition of what constitutes a weapon." Vex-Thul gestured to his own massive form, the chitinous plates that covered his torso, the razor-sharp ridges along his forearms. "These are weapons, Captain. Natural armor, cutting edges, the ability to crush bone with bare hands. This is what evolution produces in a successful predator species." "Those are certainly impressive," Riley agreed politely. Very specialized. Something in her tone made Quill 9's patches flicker more rapidly. Specialized? Well, yes, you're adapted for a specific type of combat against specific types of opponents in specific environments. That's wonderful if you're fighting other klaxons on your homeworld. But what happens when the situation changes? Vex-Thul's mandibles clicked irritably. Klaxon warriors are adaptable to any combat situation. Are you? Riley asked, and for the first time since entering the room, her voice carried a subtle edge. Commander, may I ask how many different worlds your species has successfully colonized? 17 systems, 43 planets, Vex-Thul replied proudly. And how many of those required significant terraforming or environmental modification to be habitable for klaxons? The commander hesitated. That is standard procedure for any colonization effort. All of them, then? Riley's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in her eyes. Humans currently maintain permanent settlements on over 300 worlds, Commander. Desert planets, ice worlds, high-gravity environments, low-gravity environments, worlds with toxic atmospheres, worlds with no atmosphere at all. We've built cities underwater, in the vacuum of space, inside asteroids, and on the surfaces of gas giants. Quill 9's tentacles had stopped twitching entirely. They hung motionless as he processed this information. That's not possible, he said weakly. Your species has no environmental adaptations. Exactly, Riley said, and now her smile had definitely gained a predatory edge. We don't need them. When a klaxon encounters an environment that doesn't suit their natural armor and weapons, they have to change the environment. When humans encounter an environment that doesn't suit us, or we change ourselves, or we build tools to change ourselves, or we build tools to change ourselves. She leaned forward slightly in her chair. Commander, you showed me footage of Earth's predators to demonstrate how dangerous nature can be. But here's the thing about humans and nature. We don't really see it as separate from us. Those great whites? We swim with them for fun. Those grizzly bears? We relocate them when they wander into our settlements, usually without hurting them. Those venomous snakes? We milk their venom to create life-saving medicines. Vex-Thul found himself leaning back, despite his best efforts to maintain an intimidating posture. What exactly are you suggesting, Captain? I'm not suggesting anything, Commander. I'm stating facts. You wanted to remind me that my planet is full of dangerous predators. But the thing is, we're not afraid of them because we're the ones who survived long enough to make friends with them. Do you know what the most dangerous predator on Earth actually is? Both aliens waited for her answer. Humans, Riley said simply. We're persistence hunters, Commander. Do you know what that means? Quill 9's patches had begun flickering in rapid, chaotic patterns. Persistence hunting is theoretical. There's no sentient species, actually. We chase our prey until it dies of exhaustion, Riley continued conversationally. Not quickly, not efficiently, just relentlessly. We're not the strongest or the fastest or the most heavily armed. But we never, ever stop coming, and we're very, very good at making friends with other predators who share our territory. She stood up from her chair, and somehow the motion seemed more fluid than it had when she sat down. Commander, would you like me to bring one of Earth's apex predators to our next meeting? I think it might help clarify the situation. Vex-Thul stared at her. The soft, squishy, harmless-looking human was still smiling pleasantly, but something fundamental had changed in the room's atmosphere. The trophy skulls lining the walls suddenly seemed less like symbols of klaxon dominance and more like a collection of species that had made the mistake of underestimating the wrong opponent. What kind of predator?" he asked, and hated himself for the uncertainty in his voice. Riley's smile widened, showing her small, flat teeth. Prey animal teeth, according to every xenobiology text in the galaxy. Oh, I was thinking something from Australia. Maybe a crocodile. Steve would love to meet you. Steve? My pet saltwater crocodile. He's about 20 feet long, weighs roughly a ton, and has a bite force of over 3,000 pounds per square inch. Sweet as pie, though, once you get to know him. Very well trained. Quill 9 made a sound that might have been a whimper if Tremarians were capable of whimpering. You keep apex predators as pets. Vex-Thul managed. Oh, Steve's not really a pet. More of a co-worker. He helps with aquatic excavation projects. But I've got some actual pets back home. Luna's a great white shark, about 15 feet. Then there's Maximus, he's a grizzly bear, weighs about 800 pounds. And my favorite, Princess. She's a Siberian tiger. Absolute sweetheart, loves belly rubs. Riley moved toward the door, her movements casual but somehow purposeful. Anyway, I should probably get back to my ship. Radio protocols to follow, you understand. But I'll be sure to mention to my superiors how educational this meeting has been. She paused at the threshold and turned back to face the two aliens, both of whom were staring at her with expressions that suggested their worldview had just been fundamentally challenged. Oh, and Commander, next time you want to intimidate someone with footage of dangerous animals, you might want to make sure they're not animals we consider family members. It sends mixed messages. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving Vex-Thul and Quill 9 alone in the trophy-lined chamber that suddenly felt much less impressive than it had an hour ago. After several minutes of silence, Quill 9 finally spoke. Commander, should we be concerned? Vex-Thul looked at the skulls on his walls, each one representing a species that the Klaxon Empire had conquered through superior firepower and natural weapons. None of them had been persistence hunters who made friends with apex predators and colonized hostile environments for fun. Quill 9, he said slowly, I want you to compile a full report on human expansion patterns. Every world they've colonized, every environment they've adapted to, every impossible thing they've made look routine. Yes, sir. And the negotiations? Vex-Thul continued staring at his trophy collection, but now he was seeing them differently. These weren't symbols of Klaxon superiority. They were specimens from species that had relied on natural weapons and specialized adaptations, species that had probably never encountered an opponent that simply refused to give up. I think, he said carefully, we may need to reconsider our approach to humanity. Outside the viewports, Captain Riley Mason's small, unremarkable ship detached from the docking bay and began its journey back toward human space. Inside the Bone Crusher, two very unsettled aliens began to suspect that the galaxy had just become a much more complicated place. 3 days later, Commander Vex-Thul found himself pacing the bridge of his flagship, his chitinous armor clicking against the metal deck plating with each agitated step. The intelligence reports spread across his command table made for disturbing reading. Sir, Communications Officer Zilt Prime announced from her station, her insectoid voice carrying an unusual tremor, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. Captain Mason is requesting permission to dock again. Vex-Thul's 4 eyes focused on the view screen, where Riley's ship was already approaching their position. But this time she wasn't alone. A massive human cargo transport flanked her small diplomatic vessel, its hull scarred and weathered like a working ship rather than a military escort. What's in that cargo hauler? He demanded. Quill 9 consulted his sensor readings, his tentacles moving frantically across the control interface. Biosignatures, Commander. Multiple large life forms. The readings are unusual. Patch me through to Captain Mason. The communication screen flickered to life, revealing Riley's familiar face. She appeared even more relaxed than before, if such a thing were possible, and was wearing what looked like heavy work clothes instead of her diplomatic uniform. Good morning, Commander, she said cheerfully. I hope you don't mind, but I brought some friends along. You seemed so interested in Earth's predators, I thought you might like to meet a few in person. Vex-Thul felt his mandibles clicking nervously. Captain Mason, surely you don't mean to suggest. Oh, absolutely, I do, Riley interrupted with that same bright smile. Steve's been looking forward to this trip for weeks. and Princess gets so cranky when she's cooped up in transit pods for too long. Don't worry, though, they're all very well behaved. Behind Riley, the camera angle shifted slightly, and Vex-Thul caught a glimpse of movement in the background. Something large and striped passed behind her, followed by what appeared to be a massive scaled tail. Captain Quill 9's voice was barely above a whisper. You cannot seriously be suggesting that you've brought live apex predators aboard a diplomatic vessel. Riley's laugh was warm and utterly unconcerned. Oh, these aren't just any apex predators, officer. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name last time. Quill 9, he replied automatically. Quill 9, right. These particular apex predators are trained professionals. Steve here has a certification in underwater demolitions. Princess is cross-trained in search and rescue operations. And Maximus? Well, he's mostly here for moral support, but he's excellent at heavy lifting. As if summoned by his name, an enormous grizzly bear's head appeared in the frame behind Riley. The creature looked directly into the camera with intelligent brown eyes, then made a sound that might have been friendly if one didn't know it was coming from an 800-pound omnivore capable of crushing bones with its jaws. Every alien on the bridge of the bone crusher took an involuntary step backward. That's a good boy, Maximus, Riley said, reaching back to scratch behind the bear's ears without taking her eyes off the camera. Commander will need clearance for docking Bay 3. It's the only one large enough for the habitat modules. Habitat modules. Vex-Thul repeated weakly. Well, of course. Steve needs his pool, Princess requires specific temperature controls, and Maximus gets claustrophobic in small spaces. Plus, we brought Luna along at the last minute. She insisted on coming once she heard about the trip. The camera angle shifted again, and this time Vex-Thul caught sight of a massive water tank in the background. Something grey and torpedo-shaped moved within it, something that was definitely larger than any fish he'd ever seen. Luna? He asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. My great white shark. 15 feet of pure muscle and curiosity. She loves meeting new people. Very social for a supposedly solitary predator. Officer Zilt Prime made a sound that was probably supposed to be words but came out as an incoherent buzzing. Several other bridge crew members were backing toward the exits. Commander, Quill 9 whispered urgently, we should deny docking permission. This is clearly some sort of psychological warfare tactic. But Vex-Thul found himself strangely fascinated. In all his years of conquest and diplomacy, no species had ever responded to his intimidation tactics by bringing their planet's most dangerous creatures along for a friendly chat. It was either the most audacious bluff in galactic history, or, permission granted, Captain Mason, he heard himself saying, dock in Bay 3. Wonderful. We'll see you in about an hour. Oh, and Commander, you might want to have your environmental systems increase the humidity in the meeting room. Princess gets a bit cranky when the air's too dry, and nobody wants to see a cranky tiger. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. 47 minutes later, Commander Vex-Thul stood outside docking Bay 3, accompanied by a full security detail of his most elite warriors. Each Klaxon soldier wore full combat armor and carried enough firepower to level a small building. They were the finest warriors the Empire had ever produced, feared across 17 systems. They were also visibly terrified. The docking bay doors opened with a mechanical hiss, and the first thing that emerged was the sound of splashing water and what could only be described as happy animal noises. Riley Mason appeared in the doorway, still wearing her work clothes and looking completely at ease. Commander, so good to see you again, she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. I hope you don't mind the informal attire. It's practical clothing when you're working with the team. Behind her, the cargo transport was disgorging what appeared to be a mobile zoo. A massive water tank on wheels rolled out first, guided by human technicians in diving gear. Inside the transparent aluminum walls, a great white shark circled lazily, its black eyes seeming to focus on the assembled Klaxons with predatory interest. "Luna, meet Commander Vex-Thul," Riley said conversationally. "Commander Luna, Luna." The shark pressed against the glass closest to Vex-Thul and seemed to study him. Its mouth opened slightly, revealing rows of triangular teeth that could shear through steel cables. "She likes you," Riley observed. "She usually ignores strangers, but she's definitely paying attention to you." "That's a good sign." "A good sign of what?" Vex-Thul managed. "That you're interesting. Predators appreciate other predators. It's professional courtesy." The next habitat module contained what was unmistakably the largest tiger Vex-Thul had ever seen. The massive cat moved with fluid grace, despite her enormous size, her orange and black stripes seeming to shift and flow in the artificial lighting. When she spotted the assembled klaxons, she sat down and began what humans apparently called purring. The sound was loud enough to vibrate through the deck plating. "Princess is happy to meet everyone," Riley translated. "She loves parties. Very social cat." One of Vex-Thul's security officers made a strangled noise and pointed past the tiger habitat. "Commander, what is that?" Following his gesture, Vex-Thul saw what appeared to be a walking mountain of brown fur approaching the group. The grizzly bear moved with surprising grace for something so massive, occasionally rising on its hind legs to get a better view of the proceedings. When it spotted Riley, it made a sound that was probably affectionate but registered on klaxon hearing as a low-frequency threat display. "That's Maximus saying hello," Riley explained. "He's excited. New faces, new smells, new friends to make. He's very social." "They're all very social," Quill9 observed weakly. "Well, of course they are. Antisocial predators don't make good team members. These guys have been working with humans for years. They understand cooperation, communication, problem solving. Steve, come say hello." The final habitat module was the largest, containing what appeared to be a small lake. From its depths emerged something that belonged in the fossil record rather than the modern galaxy. The saltwater crocodile was easily 20 feet long, its hide scarred from decades of survival in one of Earth's most hostile environments. It moved with the casual confidence of an apex predator that had never encountered anything capable of threatening it. Steve the crocodile hauled himself partially out of his pool and fixed his ancient eyes on Commander Vex-Thul. The two predators regarded each other across millions of years of evolutionary divergence. "He's sizing you up," Riley said helpfully. "Not in a hostile way, just professional assessment. Steve's very good at reading people. It's part of what makes him such an excellent demolitions expert." "Demolitions expert?" Vex-Thul's voice cracked slightly. "Oh yes, Steve can place explosive charges underwater with millimeter precision. He's also trained in hull breaching, underwater welding, and emergency rescue operations. Very versatile skill set." Riley moved to stand beside the crocodile's habitat, and Steve responded by sliding closer to the edge of his pool. She reached out and gently stroked the top of his massive head. The gesture was casual, familiar, and absolutely insane by the standards of every other species in the galaxy. "The thing is," Commander Riley continued, her hand still resting on 20 feet of apex predator, "you showed me footage of Earth's dangerous animals to make a point about the natural order. But I think you misunderstood something fundamental about humans and our relationship with nature." She gestured to the assembled creatures around her. "These aren't just Earth's apex predators. They're our partners, our colleagues, our family. Steve here has saved more human lives than most of our military heroes. Princess once tracked a lost child through 50 miles of wilderness in a blizzard. Maximus has helped with disaster relief operations on 12 different worlds. And Luna? She's contributed to xenobiology research that's revolutionized our understanding of predator behavior across the galaxy." Vex-Thul looked around at his security detail. Every one of his elite warriors was backing away from the human and her impossible menagerie. These were soldiers who had conquered planets, who had faced down the galaxy's most terrifying war machines without flinching. They were retreating from a soft, pink mammal and her pets. "But this is impossible," he protested. "These creatures should be uncontrollable. They should be attacking everything in sight. They're apex predators." "Exactly," Riley said, and her smile gained that familiar edge. "They're apex predators. Do you know what apex predators respect more than anything else?" Vex-Thul shook his head. "Other apex predators. And humans, Commander, are the most successful apex predators this galaxy has ever seen. We don't just hunt our prey until it collapses from exhaustion. We hunt across star systems. We pursue our goals for generations. We never give up, we never stop adapting. And we make allies out of everything that doesn't actively try to kill us." She moved away from Steve's habitat and walked slowly toward the assembled Klaxons. Princess the tiger rose and padded along beside her, while Maximus the bear shambled along on her other side. Behind them, Luna the shark paced in her tank, and Steve watched with the patient attention of a professional evaluating a potential work site. "Your species conquered 17 systems through superior firepower and natural weapons," Riley continued. "That's impressive. But humans have colonized over 300 worlds, and we did it with the help of every predator, every environmental challenge, every impossible obstacle we encountered along the way. We don't just survive hostile environments, Commander. We make friends with them." She stopped directly in front of Vex-Thul, flanked by creatures that could tear apart a Klaxon warrior in seconds, and all of them as calm and attentive as well-trained soldiers awaiting orders. "So here's my counter-proposal for these negotiations," she said pleasantly. "Instead of trying to intimidate each other with displays of natural weapons and evolutionary advantages, why don't we discuss what humans and Klaxons might accomplish as allies? Because I promise you, Commander, you really don't want to find out what happens when humanity decides to treat your species as a problem that needs solving." Vex-Thul looked at the human woman standing before him, surrounded by Earth's most dangerous predators, all of them looking at him with the calm attention of professionals waiting for instructions. He thought about humanity's expansion across the galaxy, their impossible colonies, their casual mastery of environments that would kill most species within hours. He thought about persistence hunting and about apex predators that never stopped, never gave up, and made allies out of everything they encountered. "Captain Mason," he said slowly, "I believe we should discuss the terms of a formal alliance between our species." Riley's smile brightened, and behind her, Princess the tiger made a sound that might have been approval. "Now that's what I like to hear. Steve, did you catch that? The Commander wants to be friends." The massive crocodile's tail swished once in what was probably satisfaction, though it sounded like a small earthquake. As the two species began their first real diplomatic discussion, surrounded by Earth's apex predators in the cargo bay of a Klaxon dreadnought, Vex-Thul couldn't help but think that the galaxy had just become a much more interesting place. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that humanity hadn't even shown them their real weapons yet.